All right, welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. And today we are switching it up a little. We got the roles reversed. I had the pleasure of going on Ricky Ricardo's show a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted to share on our platform because I thought it was a great conversation. We talk about my journey as a real estate agent and going into the real estate investing world. I thought it was a lot of fun, so we wanted to share it on this platform. Again, huge shout out to Ricky Ricardo. Please tune in, subscribe to his show, The Ricky Ricardo Show. And I hope you guys enjoy our conversation.
I appreciate you guys tuning in. You're back with another episode of The Ricky Ricardo Show. It is your boy, Ricky Ricardo, and I have an interview here for you guys. We're going to bring someone on the line that can actually share their story, share some information that might be able to help myself, might be able to help you guys. So I did bring an investor-friendly agent on the show. So we met on Instagram. We have a couple other mutual friends from social media. So if you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. So I know you're on the West Coast. I'm all the way on the other side of the nation in the East Coast. Born and raised here. I love it here. I know we were just talking off camera about my market. Went to school for business. I went to school in Baltimore County at Stevenson University. And I got introduced to real estate in 2020, right before the pandemic, which was a crazy time to get licensed as an agent. I don't know if any of your listeners remember what happened during the pandemic. You know, interest rates were historically low. And as a newer agent, you're mainly working with buyers, right? So in my market, we were going against 15, 20, sometimes 30 offers that were going way above asking price. So it was an interesting time to start, right? I learned a ton, what to do to make your offers stand out when you're in a competitive market. But yeah, since then, I got into real estate investing. I know that's what you and what you talk about on your show. In 2023 is when my brother and I bought our first investment property. Didn't know what the heck we were doing. And since then, I've learned a ton in the last 2 years. We're up to 4 rental properties, currently working on a flip. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Now that you mentioned that, so I wanted to, you started as an agent. So before you were an agent, did you even think about investing in your own properties?
Yeah, no. And it kind of happened organically, right? So my dad is a contractor. And every time I tell people that, they're like, oh man, you're so lucky. Like,
Right.
But so my dad was working on homes and he was passing it off to agents to resell or things like that. And he was like, Nico, just get your license. We can kind of keep it all in house. Because after college, I worked with him. I still work with him as a project manager for, construction company or contracting company. So that's how I got introduced. I got licensed. And in the beginning stages, I was just doing residential, helping people buy their first home. I'm a millennial. So, most of my clients, I'd say about 50% of my clients are helping people buy their first home, first time home buyers.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't really know much about the investing side. I actually read a book called The Cash Flow Breakfast Club by Ahmed Casey. And it was a story about a real estate agent that was kind of getting burnt out. You only get what you put in on the agent side. If you're not someone else's, you're not making any money. And he kind of shifted into the investing world because really it is 2 different worlds. And I learned that, down the road. And that's what really piqued my interest. I went to a few meetups locally and I was learning things in these meetups that I never even learned, when I was getting licensed as an agent. And since then, and I just got obsessed. I was reading all the books. I was listening to podcasts. Now I consider myself an investor friendly agent because I own real estate myself. I know what makes a good real estate investment.
Yeah, no, awesome. I mean, because I think there's a lot of conversation out there. There's a lot of information out there that says, if you just have X, then you can go buy an investment property and become rich. And now you're on top of the world. And then they also think like a lot of people start from way up here, for example, when you said your dad was a contractor, everyone thinks, there goes that story. He cheated, he had access to all of this stuff already, but you didn't. I mean, yeah, he did that, but you're your own person. You got into the trenches. You were an agent first. You learned that lingo. And I can only imagine that was tough. So I can only imagine you representing a buyer trying to navigate and get your bid or your offer to actually win. So in that time, if you can go back, since that's, everyone was affected by COVID in some way. Did you have any successful offers during COVID wins, and how did you separate yourself?
Yeah, brother, what a crazy time we lived in during the pandemic, right? It was not, I mean, not only in our businesses, but, everything going on. And,
Right.
but yeah, it was tough. It was tough, as a
Yeah.
newer agent. As I mentioned, you're working, you're struggling, you don't have a big book of business. And luckily, like I took sales as well. So I think that really helped, just being personable with people. I like putting stuff on social media. So I really was leveraging my Instagram and things like that of like, hey, I'm doing a showing and this and that.
Okay.
Because it takes a little time for people to feel comfortable with using you as an agent. I mean, most of the time, this is the biggest purchase that they're ever going to do in their lifetime. In order to feel comfortable working with friends and family, you wanted to make sure that you knew what you were doing. So one of the benefits I would say is starting as an agent before as an investor is learning all the paperwork. I don't know how California is, but I know in Maryland there is a lot of paperwork, a lot of disclosures that you have to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes offers can be 50 pages, right? And you're writing it. So, and your question was, how could you make your offer stand out when you're going against 10, 15, 20 offers? There's a few different things. And I'll give you the cliff notes of the tips that I like to do.
Yeah.
And the obvious one, the first one is, offer price, right? If you're going above asking, that's always a start. Obviously, leverage your agent to know if there is multiple offers. Obviously, talk to your agent to see if the offer even makes sense. Because if you're going above asking and the home doesn't appraise for that, then you can be in a whole nother problem.
Yeah. I could.
Another tip is, contingencies. So the most common one is a home inspection contingency. You have to talk about your risk tolerance, right? Whether you're willing to risk that, which is appealing to the seller, less appealing to you as a buyer. Some investors, and it's very common with investors, is they're just waiving that. They're like, hey, I'm buying it as is.
Right.
But if you're like a first-time home buyer and you're not comfortable with doing that, what I've been coaching my clients is maybe shortening the inspection window. So a standard one could be like 7 days, 10 days, but you can say, hey, I will get my inspection done and you'll know within 3 days. And that can be appealing to a seller because they'll be like, okay, I'll get an answer within 3 days. And if they don't plan on moving forward, then we can go back on the market. And you can make your inspection window void only, meaning you're not going to try and negotiate with the seller. So these are all things that you as a buyer could do to make your offer more appealing. Let's see, earnest money deposit. So I'm sure your audience may know what that means, but it's basically good faith money. It's money you're putting up at risk as a buyer. So if you're putting usually, 1 to 3% is common, of the purchase price. Here in the DMV, if you go higher than that, that shows the seller that you're a serious buyer. Like, hey, I'm willing to put up 20K, 30K at risk because I really want to buy the house. So there's just certain things. Those are just three tips. There's a lot of different things that you can do to make your offer stand out in a competitive market. My goal as an agent is to make your offer most appealing, whatever you are comfortable with as a buyer. If it's somebody looking to buy their first home, we might make it all contingencies, lower EMD, and that way they're comfortable. And in my experience, and I'm going to share this with any buyer that I work with. Hey, this is what is going on in this market. Now, in order to be competitive, you may have to do certain things, but I'm never going to tell you what to do in your offer. I'm just going to be here to guide you, and whatever you're comfortable with, that's what we're going to do. If you lose, we can adjust on the next house. Yeah. But we're never going to write an offer that you're not comfortable with.
Got it. No, that's good. There's a bad rep sometimes for agents out there, the agents that just are there for the commission check. And now, don't get me wrong, we all do this. There's money involved. If you do a good job, you're going to get paid. But
of course,
it seems like there's a lot of licenses out there that don't practice in the best interest or to be ethical in regards to the buyer. So where I'm going with that is do you change your hat, or do you change it when you're dealing with someone trying to buy their first home to live in with their family versus trying to help someone that is an investor trying to just get some returns on a property?
Yeah, such a great question, Ricky. I would say, the conversation is different when you're dealing with investors versus somebody looking for their primary home. It's less emotional. When you're buying real estate, it is emotional. In my experience, the investors are looking at numbers. They're looking at appreciation. They're looking at, certain things. Whereas a primary residence is looking for the schools, whether it has a nice backyard for their dogs and certain things. So, there might be some overlap with that, but the conversation is definitely different. I mean, you as an agent, and just like you said earlier, like there's always going to be bad apples in any business, right? There's going to be some agents where you could smell the commission breath, right? We always say that. We always say that in the business.
I like that.
We're just trying to get the deal done, and those people get weeded out quickly, right? So I always thought of myself of working with integrity, like somebody, and this starts with the initial buyer consultation or the listing agreement. Like, hey, what are your goals with buying a home? If I'm working with a first time home buyer, what are your goals? Are you looking to be here for 10 years? Are you looking to be really aggressive and just buy the first home that you see? When you work with integrity and you have those conversations up front, I noticed that a lot of people are happy with the way that it goes throughout the process. Okay, Nico told me that, it is a competitive market and we may see multiple offers on this house because it's underpriced and it looks really good. I went to the open house with Nico and there was 10 other people there. So I know it's going to be competitive. Maybe we can do some certain things to make our offer more appealing. Obviously, vetting your agent is very important to have somebody that's on your team, on your corner, and not just trying to get the deal done.
To vet an agent, I struggle with that. I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially dealing with out of state. Like, I don't know exact questions and I want to go based off an emotional feel because I don't have anything else to go off of other than a phone call if I'm not going to fly out. But like, whether in person or out of state, do you have specific criteria that you would expect, that you may ask yourself, that you would expect an investor to ask to make sure you're a good fit, or that agent is, quote, investor friendly?
So we're talking specifically if you're an investor looking for an agent,
investor,
right?
correct.
Okay. Yeah, because there's two different conversations, whether you're doing like the residential side or if you're an investor like you and you're looking to do out of state investing, because this is such an important question, because a lot of people do out of state, especially people that are in markets like ours where it's expensive to buy, or it doesn't make sense as a cash flow market. You're going out of state or thousands of miles away in your case to try and find properties that make sense as investments. So I think we actually talked about this on our conversation, but one of the first things I would ask, well, actually, let me backtrack. Where do you go to find these, right? Where do you go? The first thing I would look up is referrals, right? If you know people that are in these markets, even if it's a family member that lives out, and I know you invest in Alabama, and you're like, okay, who do I know nearby?
Right.
If you don't know anybody nearby, that's when you start going online. And one of the bigger online platforms is Bigger Pockets. You can go online to Bigger Pockets and look at the forums. They have an agent finder tool, and you're still going to want to try and vet them, right? So the first thing I always say is, are you an investor yourself? Because if you ask the question, are you an investor friendly agent? Every agent's going to say yes.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
And then the follow-up question would say, hey, are you an investor yourself? And why is that important, right? Because if somebody is just doing residential transactions, they might understand what it is to have a residential. Like I said, it's more emotion. There's things like that, but they don't really understand the lingo of what makes a good investment, right? I know you're doing out-of-state investing. You're probably looking for cash flow. So you're probably going to ask this guy, hey, what are the rental rates in the market? And most of the time as an agent, you might maybe know some of the rental rates, but you're not, looking at it monthly. You're looking at resale, buy and sell. So you're going to look at, you're going to ask them, hey, what are the rental rates? What's the crime rate? What is ARV? You're going to use acronyms like this, the after repair value. And if somebody, what is that? What the heck is that? That should be a red flag for you, right? People that are investor friendly agents understand that it's less emotion. They have their formulas of why they're making an offer. Most of the time it's under asking price. And they understand their goals, right? Like every investor is different. If you're investing for cash flow, you're probably looking at different markets. If you're investing for appreciation, we just talked about our markets appreciating 5 to 10% annually. Those are different investors. They might be putting 50% down, and they're just looking to grow that nest egg for when they retire.
Right.
So having that conversation with them is so important to understand their goals, and then vetting the agent, seeing if they actually understand the lingo of the investor side.
Sure. And so, like you said, most of your offers you're going to assume from an investor are going to be lower than let's say, something that's listed on the market, right? On Zillow. I've heard agents in conversations say, I won't submit an offer under, or I'm not going to lowball because that's going to ruin my name as an agent, because they deal with a lot of emotional buyers. I hate to say that, but people
Yeah.
that are trying to buy homes. So it's like, well, I may not get a deal if the local market knows Nico or Ricardo's coming in constantly offering 80,000 under what market price is.
Yeah.
I think with newbies and with people in this audience and the beginner investors, they may have a couple properties, but how do you tailor expectations to them to say, hey, we can't. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but even as an investor friendly agent, do you just take every lowball offer and submit it?
So this brings up a great topic. So our good friend Anna, right? She also invests out of state, and one question that she asks any agent is, how comfortable do you feel writing offers that are below asking? And that's a confrontational question.
It is.
All right, well,
Absolutely.
like, hey, as an agent, you're like, whoa, like this guy going to be a pain in the ass? Like, oh, he's going to just waste my time, kind of thing. And the last thing you want to do is waste anyone's time,
For
right?
sure.
But that question right there could be like, okay, what do you mean by that? Are you looking to do fix and flips? Are you looking to, what are your margins? People that are looking to do, write offers, when you're an investor, you're looking for a good deal, right? So you have to be comfortable as an agent. So I'm reversing the role where you got to understand investors' numbers, right? If they're a fix and flipper, like locally, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's putting an offer PTA on their asking, why is that? Are they, is there margins? They need to make PTA on this flip. The material cost rehab is X. I've noticed, if you're submitting an offer that's below asking and you give them just a 1-page sheet of like, hey, this is as a buyer with your offer submitting to the listing agent saying, hey, this is why we need it at this price, because we estimate after we're done, it's going to be worth X. We estimate this much rehab and we need to make this much profit. The listing agent and the seller are going to be like, okay, I understand that, right? They understand the numbers and why it makes sense as an offer, rather than you just throwing it out blind and, expecting, them to be like, oh yeah, let's move forward. But like you said, though, Ricky, you bring up a good point, because your reputation is so important. I specialize in Montgomery County, Maryland, but I work all over, and I don't want to be the guy that is known for, hey, Nico's just submitting so many offers, 10 offers a day,
right,
looking for the best. You need to give some context. You need to build relationships with other agents. That's actually how I bought my own house, is having a great relationship. We got it off market. Nice. So, your reputation is very important, but you need to understand the investing side if you're trying to work with investors.
No, for sure. Thank you for that, because I think people are even scared to put in offers because they're assuming the conversation with the agent is going to be bad. But I actually like that. That's huge in what you just shared. And I'm going to take that back myself, because if I'm not going to be a jerk if I see a printout of why your offer is what it is. I might say no, but at least I understand where you're at. And, I also might take you a little bit more serious, to where, just to be dramatic, you offered less than 100K, you offered 100K less. I'm like, oh, okay, you're being ridiculous, but you have your numbers. Maybe I'm okay with 50,000 less, and I'll send it back to you. And then let's see if we can
start the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Ricky, I think you shared a great example, right? You mind sharing that one more time of like when you first put your offer into this recent house, this recent flip, right? Sure. You were like, man, I'm nervous to even put it out, right?
No, exactly. And just to give the listeners a recap, was when I first got the property, the flip that I'm talking about was 130, 135. And for some reason, I just didn't think that was okay, because I didn't want to pay asking. And so I started low and I submitted a number, and the person was like, no, that's not going to work. Thank you for your offer. It's not as, I shouldn't say embarrassing, but it's not as insulting as some of the offers we've received. So we'll give you $1. If you can beat 100 grand, thanks for your offer, then we can continue our conversation. Just like in that kind of example, I said, okay, I'll come over 100. And then we started talking and we ended up getting the deal.
Yeah. A good mentor of mine said, like, if your first offer isn't embarrassing or it doesn't like make you cringe, then it's not, but like you said, it starts the conversation. They're like, okay, we had offers below the 90 that you were given. Right. If you can meet us at 100, which is, believe it or not, a $30,000 discount that you from list price. So if you didn't do the 990, for example, let's just say you did 110, then they'd be like, oh, sure, let's go.
Right.
But it's the art of negotiation, right? You showed interest. I think I remember you saw this one that was on the market for a little bit of time now. Maybe it was a little overpriced, which isn't uncommon now. After the pandemic, all the prices went up. People look on Zillow, they see their estimate. They're like, oh, I can get this much for my home. And, the market's telling them otherwise.
People really act that way.
I think it's funny. It's a cliche when people are like, agents are always going to say it's a good time to buy, but really it actually is a good time to buy because, sometimes these sellers have unrealistic expectations for what their home is worth. And they put it on the market. It sits for 30, 60 days. They get antsy. And then you come in and you're like, hey, I'll go 90K, or, hey, I'll go 120, but I need you to pay for all my closing costs, or hey, I need you to give me 2% seller credit so I can buy down my rate. So there's a lot of ways that you can negotiate with sellers that are on the market, really motivated to sell their homes.
And so with the current market and the sellers' status or the state we're in as sellers, are there a lot of people that are in the post-pandemic because I know there's a lot of articles, there's everything out there where homes aren't selling. There's this influx of homes just sitting on the market and there's no buyers. Does some of that attribute to overpriced or just higher expectation from the sellers to where they're not even getting offers, to the point where if I submitted an offer, I could tickle you a little bit to get your interest?
Yeah, no, great question. Because, the market really does change every 3 months, right?
Okay.
And when I'm working with sellers, I always try and set the right expectations. And I'm like, hey, we're going to go off of comps from the last 6 months. And the market 6 months ago might be different than it is today, whether it's interest rates, whether it's, supply and demand and things like that. So you're trying to set the expectations when you're working with sellers. Now, here in the DMV, I know you have listeners from all over the nation, but here in the DMV, homes appreciated so much over the pandemic, the 2020 all the way to 2024, like last year, last year. And then now it's pretty steady. And, you use in residential real estate, you use comps, comparables, recently sold properties as comps, which is crazy, but it is the way it is. If somebody really loved a home next door and they paid, $600,000, that's a comp as long as it looks similar to your home.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean in 2 months to come that's what you're going to get, but you price yours based off of what Joe Schmo bought the home for next door.
Yeah.
And that's just how it's been. And that's how it is here in Montgomery County. Homes are sitting a little bit longer. Now, it really depends on the home too. If it's a home that, needs a little bit of work, like for example, I had a home that we knew he wasn't going to put any money to repair it. There was a little bit of water damage and things like that.
Okay.
And I coached him. I said, hey, the comp is 420, but you need all of this. Let's start at 390 just to, bring people in and things like that. Now, not every agent is doing that, right? Every agent's you need to have that conversation up front and be like, hey, this is our game plan. And eventually, hopefully we get enough traffic, we can drive the price back up and get multiple bids, which is exactly what we did.
Okay.
So it really depends on the seller and the conversation that you have. Some people really some sellers dig their heels. They're like, hey, no, I want X. Okay. And that comes to you as an agent. Like, are you willing to have a listing sit on the market for 6 months because your seller kind of bullied you into putting this on the market for X? When I was a younger agent, I was doing whatever he told me. And that takes some time. It takes some sales, and honestly, it takes a little bit of balls and confidence of you as an agent. Like, hey, I'll give you another example. I had somebody, a condo for sale, and this exact situation. Hey, I want X, and I'm not going to go less than that. I was like, and it was a referral. I really I wanted to have the conversation. I was like, I don't feel comfortable listing it at that price.
Right.
And we were at like a 50K difference. And I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to waste my time and your time. You're probably better off finding an agent that will do it. And
right.
He ended up doing it. It sat. He ended up selling it. I think I ended up going a little bit over what I was recommending, which is fine. I'm happy for him. But it sat for a long time. And if you're a owner occupier, meaning you live in that home, you're paying for that mortgage.
Still paying. Exactly.
You're cleaning every day before showings. It can be stressful. So
listeners, audience, I gave you guys a bunch of information that you can rewind this, take notes, and now talk to agents all over the world and be more comfortable. So Thank me later for that. Now, Nico, with everything you shared, you are an investor yourself as well. And
Yes.
and we can tie in some things as far as your agent experience and as that goes or as we go along. But everything that you shared, negotiation, time as an agent, the crazy world of COVID, multiple bids, all that. How did you get into your first property? What did that first property look like? And I know you were younger in your agent era
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So I guess talk to that agent now and then the experience you had then. Like, what did your first deal look like? And how would I guess some of the tools that you're fully aware of, how do you think that helped you?
Yeah. So the investing side, I was nervous, man. I'm, full transparency. I was doing deals for 2 years, and I love the aspect of helping people buy and sell, but I didn't own any real estate myself.
Yeah.
So I almost felt like kind of like a phony, like helping people buy and sell and invest and not really owning real estate myself.
Thanks for sharing that.
And, I always talk about, the balance of learning, but also learning as you go, right? And as you can see, I have a few books here. A lot of them are real estate related. So during that time, I was reading a lot about like investing. I was learning about self-development and negotiation skills, everything, listening to podcasts. But I was really trying to learn about real estate investing. That's why I got into it. My dad did fix and flips before I was born. He owned a lot of real estate. Unfortunately, he lost a lot during that '08 crash. He has, ever since I was born, he was in construction, and I'm very fortunate to have a father that's been in the business. He understands it. He understands construction. I worked with him back in high school, and I hated it. I was putting packs of shingles, bringing it to the roof on roof jobs.
Yeah.
But looking back, I was like, man, I'm really fortunate that I did that because I learned what really goes into making houses, kitchen remodels, everything under the sun we did. But fast forward a little, during 2023, kind of stumbled across a deal. And again, people are going to say this is luck. This is just being in the right time or the right time, whatever the saying is. Like I said, he has a big book of business. He has a relationship with an estate attorney. So when people pass away, he is in charge of either reselling it or fixing it up. So in that case, my dad comes, and this is how it was for the last 10 years. He would come, fix it up. An agent would come and list it, and everybody would get paid, kind of thing. So I actually started building a relationship with this estate attorney as well, just being an agent and helping, homes go for sale. And this one property came, and I wasn't pre-approved. I wasn't I wasn't ready to buy. I wasn't even thinking about it, to be honest. Somebody passed away. It was an acre lot in Silver Spring, Maryland. It was a good deal. It needed work. And my dad was like, hey, man, let's go walk this house. And we put an offer in, and the attorney, put in a good word for us. He got other bids as well. And we were able to get property under contract. Didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I got pre-approved real quickly. My brother and I, my brother owns his own car detailing business. We got pre-approved and we bought it 20% down, invested on. And
nice.
I had some help with my dad financially, as well as the construction side. So we had to do some work. I knew nothing about being a landlord. But looking back, I'm like, man, I would have done this differently. I did help a few clients, get tenants in their home. So I knew a little bit about the tenant qualifications and, the process, but I never did it for myself. Long story short, we found some great tenants. They're still there today. They actually renew in a couple of days this is going to be on the third year.
Okay.
And they've been great, taking care of the property. And, since then we scaled a little bit more. We could talk about that, but that first one, you just got to get your foot in the door, right? The 0 to 1 is the hardest. It really is. You hear people like, hey, I want to invest in real estate, but I don't have a lot of money. Okay. Well, you ever thought about partnering? You ever thought about using hard money or private money? You ever thought about, there's so many different ways. Right? Have you ever thought about house hacking, where you're buying a primary residence and renting out portions? So there's so many different ways, and you really, really learn more. I mean, you could probably vouch for this as well. You learn more in the last couple of years invest in yourself than you did listening to all those podcasts, right?
Exactly. No, I mean, I listened to podcasts for years, and then it's like, now that I'm into it, like little things from the podcast pop in. I'm like, oh, remember that. So, I mean, we're not the only ones. I'm not the only one. There's people listening that have never taken that first step, that are deep into books, deep into podcasts, and they're just saturated with information that they end up scaring themselves to take that leap or to get that first one. But It's almost like when I thought you sharing the story of your dad is where he picked up his networking deal with the estate attorney. That was probably through network, but that's because he was in the trenches, or so to speak. And, at some point got some kind of partnership or some collab with an estate attorney. And now he's able to get certain deals. In the same sense, if you get like I did in my first example I showed people before, is you get your first one. Now you're in the room with those kind of people, and more deals might just fall in your lap, or maybe you may be more privy to having access to. Once you get in the door, you start speaking in different lingo, your confidence is better.
The conversation's a little bit different, right, Ricky?
Exactly.
You're hearing people talking about ARVs and this and that you hear on podcasts. So I vouch a lot of my success and things that I've done because of my community. I'm a part of a few different communities. I host a local meetup, and really I started doing it mainly selfishly because I wanted to continue this conversation, right? I'm so excited. Right. I'm sure you're excited, but you go home and nobody's really talking about real estate investing like you are, right? And unless they are, which are great, make sure you keep those convos up. But that really helped me. I wanted to be in reels where people are doing what I want to be doing, and the conversation's more like, okay, how am I scaling to the next one?
Right.
And one thing that I did early is, I went to these meetups. Before I hosted it, I was just an attendee, and I encourage any of you guys listening to, check out investor meetups. It's really easy. Google it. I'm part of the Cash Flow Breakfast Club meetup, but go and meet these people. I know it's intimidating and things like that, but what I did was I found a gentleman. His name's Alejandro. He was actually younger than me, but he was doing a bunch of fix and flips. And I was like, man, that's so cool. Like a guy younger than me, also Latino from Bolivia, an immigrant. Okay. And I was like, is it cool if I just tour you, or, come in and see your investments? I just want to just kind of, you could talk about the numbers with me. And I wanted to see what a good deal was.
Right.
And as a newer investor, that right there is invaluable, because you're going in, you're seeing what it looked like, right? Down to the bones. This was a flip in DC. And I was like, okay. He showed me the Alta, how much he bought it for, what were property taxes, all these things that, I knew as an agent. I know what a HUD statement is. I know what it looks like, what are closing costs, but I didn't put my investor hat on where I was like, okay, what does that mean? What are holding costs? What are, he was using private money, but it's similar to hard money. How much do you have to pay every month until this one's sold? So he explained all that, and I was like, hey, this is freaking awesome. Like, mind blown. Just being incorporated, having conversations with people that are actually doing it, that love it. And that's helped me so much.
Yeah. And I hope I'm not offending anybody when I say you can create your real, because when you're in your podcast and your books and you're not doing anything, you kind of create this fantasy land that you're just dreaming. And like you said, when you go to these meetups, or you even saying, hey, can I check out your investments? Let me walk a property with you and almost touch it. You can make it real. And now that in itself turns your thought process and confidence and conversation to, well, I can be in this too. Nico's a regular person. Ricardo's a regular person. Even the people with huge portfolios, they're just a regular person, and they're willing to talk this talk. It's a similar conversation. Everyone started, so as intimidating as it is, everyone knows you're new when you're there. So they're not going to be a douche to you.
So one thing that I can add to this, Ricky, is like sharing your story, man. You started your show, and I remember that. And I know starting a show, we have our own show as well. I'm sure we'll plug it later, but I hated hearing myself on camera, man. I was like, man, especially as a newer investor, I was like, man, what if I say something that's stupid and people think of me? My agent, my brokerage was always like, do video. And I look back at those videos, I'm like, man, those were pretty bad. But the more that you share your story and you're actually comfortable, especially in the beginning stages,
for sure.
If you don't own any real estate, it's going to be hard to be like, I'm a real estate investor, putting a selfie, I'm a real estate investor. But I've actually heard people that do that. They're like, hey, I'm a real estate investor. When I was in the beginning stages, right, I was touring homes, and just anytime as an agent, I'm just putting a quick video. Hey, what do you think of this ugly home? Or what do you think of this creepy basement? And just starting that conversation. People reach out on direct message, and they're like, wow, that's an ugly home. How much is that going for? Or, this and that. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable just sharing our journey, especially I have this flip going on. And I'm just, being super transparent, because then people see that, right? They might not say anything, but they see it. And then when the time comes where I've gotten deals just because my uncle's house is really ugly and they're thinking of downsizing. Do you think, this could be a good investment for you? Or what do you think that we need to do in order to list it? The good thing about being an investor friendly agent and an investor myself, I can look at it two ways. I can be like, hey, I'll buy it from you for X, or this is what we need to do to get it ready for listing on the market. So kind of is the best of both worlds.
No, nice. And let's talk about, so when you were going into your next deal, so when you're scaling a little bit, I know we talked offline and we talked a little bit about when I did your show, and it relates to my flip in Alabama, because I might be needing to pivot in a similar way. But you went through a flip, or you went through a purchase of a property. If you can just share the numbers, you don't gotta go crazy into it unless you want to, how that turned out in the end game. So if you can just talk about that real quick.
Yeah, I love sharing the story because this was our next deal, right? And another off-market deal. And you'll probably hear a theme of this. Every market's different, right? But here locally, if it's on the market, it's getting bid up. So we found this one off market. Yeah, initially it was a fix and flip. We bought it. We were renovating it. I was listening to podcasts, but I didn't really understand the BRRRR method, which is you buy, you rehab, you rent it out, you refinance, and you repeat it. But I was actually in the process of reading the BRRRR book from David Green. But long story short, we bought it at a good discount. We bought it for $205. I want to say $205, a single family home. And the ARV was about I estimated about 420. It needed about $100K worth of work. So anyway, we started working, we renovated it. It looks really good. We're getting it ready to go on the market. And we talk about seasonality of real estate all the time, right? So kind of around the same time right now. So this is August when we're recording this, and we started rehabbing it. By the time it was getting ready to go on the market, it was November. Honestly, it was like maybe a week or two before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Which is not ideal, right? Not a lot of people like to move or buy homes during the Thanksgiving, Christmas break.
Right.
So we put it on the market for 420. Didn't really get any bites. We had a few lowball offers, and it just didn't make sense. But at the time, I was reading this book. I was like, wow, this would really be cool to kind of keep as a rental. And I broached the topic with my dad, who's my partner. We had money involved in it. So my private money lender helped us with the purchase. We funded all the rehab. And then, so we decided to do a cash out refi.
Okay.
Now looking back, we were talking off camera, right? I was like, man, I wish I kind of put it up for sale and for rent at the same time so we can kind of expedite the process. But this was maybe I think we ended up being on the market a little under 2 months. And we didn't get any bites for sale. And then I put it up for rent. And man, I knew it was a good rental market, but we got 8 applications within the first week. I was like, man, we should have done this way earlier. So our lender, he didn't need a physical piece. They do their own appraisal for rents and things like that. So I started that process. Actually, a lender that I met at my meetup. So again, community is very important. So we did a cash out refi, which means you're able to take 70 to 75% of the ARV, the after repair value, back out as a check, essentially. So what we did is we got, I want to say it was $287 after like closing costs and things like that. We were able to pay our private money lender plus his interest for I think it was 5 months that he had his money out, and we recouped most of our construction costs. And now we have a cash flowing rental. So we got a great family in there. They've been in there. They're coming up on 2 years in February in there. But one lesson that I'd like to share with your audience, and I know we're getting close on time, but I over renovated this one. And looking back, it was before I flipped. So it makes sense, right? You're putting granite countertops and making it really, really, really nice. If I knew going in that I was going to keep it as a rental, I wouldn't have renovated to such an extreme, because, rentals don't need the same type for full rehab. So we would have probably been able to do what's called the perfect BRRRR, where you're able to get all your money out and do it again. Right. Those are just harder to do and harder to find nowadays. But I love that property. I actually drove by there yesterday just to, put eyes on it. It's just a pretty cool story to being able to pivot. Multiple exit strategies in real estate is so important.
Yeah, no. And thank you for sharing that, because now that the moment you shared that, listing it for rent, I'm like, damn it, I should have did that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just see what happened. Even when my property didn't have the best carpentry finishings, I mean, for a rental, someone would have possibly moved in and covered the holding costs because it's not cheap.
Exactly.
And then I just have to figure out if I can, like we talked about, if I can still list it for sale while it's being rented at the same time. But
well, as long as
no, thanks for sharing that nugget. That's huge.
Yeah, as long as it's in a market, in a location that you're comfortable with keeping it as a rental. I know you do a lot of out of state investing.
No, that's right.
If it doesn't make sense, and we had another flip that I was like, I don't think I want to keep this as a rental because it's not in a market that I really like. So if it is, then yeah, I don't see why.
No, yeah, and I'm considering staying in the nearby city. So we'll see. We'll entertain. I'll talk with my agent, see if it's an option, and see, have that conversation about rentals in that specific home. It's a large home, so 3-4 acres. We'll see. Yeah,
let's get that one sold.
Exactly.
On to the next one.
So you're in a current flip right now.
Yeah.
You bought this just recently, and I only want to tie that to it's today's market. So everyone's scared of today's market, but you're in an active transaction currently. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I like sharing the story, and I'll make this as brief as I can because finding deals is harder. Anybody who's listening, it's not easy to find deals, but because the good deals they're harder to find. And this particular home I found through driving for dollars. So for your audience who doesn't know what that means, basically, you're driving around. Anytime you're driving to work, you're looking for the ugly home in the nice neighborhood, the one that has a blue tarp on the roof, or the lawn is overgrown, or the mailbox is overfull, and maybe it has a boarded up window or something. And you're like, and you write down the address. You're like, hey, let's see if this guy might be interested in selling. So technically, it's off market, right? You're going direct to seller. I have this software called Deal Machine. It's a paid platform where you can send postcards. Automatic postcards every 45 days that says, hey, my name is Nico. My fiance, Jessica, and I are looking for investment properties in the Bowie area or the Burtonsville area. If you are at all interested in selling, please give me a call. We offer cash offer, something like that. I'm butchering it, but we offer cash offer, quick close. And the best part about it, what I love about it, is it allows you to take a picture of the home and how it looks today, right? That home was jacked up, Ricky. When I said jacked up, like ugly home. And it's been like that for years. I drove by with Jessica like all the time because there's a few restaurants that we like. Yeah, this would be a really cool house to buy. So long story short, literally 9 months, Ricky, this guy calls me. He's like, hey, I might be interested in selling. He was not out of state, but literally like 3 hours away on the eastern shore of Maryland. He was like, I'm coming by later today if you want to come meet me. I'm meeting another investor. So I already knew there was going to be a little bit of competition. I was like, all right, well. And it's funny because the day of, I was with Jessica. She was off work. We were just driving around. I think we were doing grocery shopping. And he called me. And I was like, Jess, once he gave me the address, I was like, we need to go. Me and it says Jessica and Nico are looking for properties. Jessica and Nico show up. It is what it is. And honestly, I think that's what helped me get the deal. Again, long story short, I talked to him. He, telling me, hey, I'm in foreclosure, I'm in bankruptcy. This was like an hour conversation. I'm just talking to him, trying to, be a people person, right. Understand the situation. Hey, why are you looking to sell? The home wasn't. From the outside, it looked terrible. From the inside, it looked just as bad. It's funny looking at my fiance's face when she's like, what the hell you got me into? Like, this home had graffitis on the wall, had holes, like a big hole in the roof. Oh, no. I'm over here like, this is nice. Like, this is nice. And she's looking at her, she's like, how the hell do I get out of here? Kind of thing. Right. He wanted a number. Anyway, I countered, and then we met kind of similar in the middle. And we were able to close. Oh, the most important part, right? He tells me he's in foreclosure, and he's like, if I don't sell this home or get it under contract by this following Tuesday, it was a Friday when we met, the following Tuesday, then I'm going to lose the home. And I'm like, damn, dude, I wish you came to me like a few weeks ago. He was in foreclosure for at least like 9 months. So he was dragging his feet, which a lot of people that are in foreclosure, I mean, they're in tough situations, and sometimes they're embarrassed, and the homes are usually
there's no motivation to.
So as long as you're being a people person, you're able to get the most important information out. So he says Tuesday. I'm like, shit, it's a Friday afternoon. Let me call my title attorney to see what he can do to expedite this, right? So I call him. He's like, wow, like we're going to have to title companies don't work on the weekend. He's like, we're going to have to expedite this on Monday as much as we can so that you can get this at least under contract by Tuesday.
For sure. Right.
You want to do it correctly. Especially this is my first foreclosure, my first bankruptcy. I wanted to make sure that I'm not buying a dud and that's going to bite me in the butt down the road. So having a partner, that's a title attorney, for anybody who's listening, very important. I've done a lot of deals with them, luckily, because I'm an agent. But if you're not an agent, try and reach out to them, take them out to coffee, take them out to lunch, and just let them know. But anyway, we got under contract. I was able to stop the foreclosure. So we had to come up with $52K in order to stop the foreclosure. All his back taxes, his violations and everything. Now, in order to protect my $52K, we put a lien on his other property that he owns free and clear in order for us to feel comfortable with doing that, right? And this took, this took almost a whole day of negotiating and things that because we didn't really have a lot of time. And then for anybody who's listening that ends up doing foreclosures or bankruptcies, it takes a little longer than what I thought it was going to take to actually get to the closing table. Traditionally, it's 30 days to close. This one took almost 2 months to actually close. Wow. Because you have to go to the bankruptcy court and things like that. But anyway, it ended up being kind of a win-win, right? So we bought a home at a discount that we really like. And I talk about this all the time. I love that home. I'm still trying to figure out if there's a way to keep it as a rental. So it was a win for us. It was a win for him because he didn't.
I was going to say that. Home, huge win for him.
Didn't lose his home. And he, after all his things, he's still going to walk away with some money.
Right.
It's funny because at the closing table, my title attorney's like, he told the seller, he's like, yeah, Nico kind of saved your ass. You know that, right? Like,
so that's what everyone listening is thinking that.
Yeah. So, we have a good relationship with the seller, luckily. And then I didn't even brush about this, but our private money lender lives 2 blocks away from this house. So it's a win for him because that ugly home that's a dud that, has been an eyesore for him for years. He's like, oh yeah, man, let's fix this one up and get it resold. So he's happy. It's a win-win for, his neighborhood's going to, appreciate. So
absolutely.
We're currently in the framing process. We just got our permits approved by the county. Took a little longer than I hoped, but we're working there. We got guys there every day, even on the weekends. So
awesome.
Working.
There's I'm sure a lot of people see foreclosures and bankruptcies and see lower price things and just think, oh, I could just jump in and it's a regular transaction. But like Nico said, when you vet your agent, if you're going into it, ask them if they are familiar, I would imagine, right? Ask if they're familiar with foreclosures, bankruptcies.
Or short sales, Ricky. Short sales take even longer from what I hear. So I've never done one, but sometimes they say that could take like 6 to 8 months to close. So having those conversations up front is very important.
Yeah. No. Well, thanks for that. Yeah. If you are chasing a bankruptcy, just like I said, ask your agent or shorts, any of those not normal status homes. Make sure your agent or whoever's involved knows how to navigate those waters. Because like Nico was himself an agent and investor, and he was scared of buying a dud. So if you guys don't know what the hell you're doing, you might end up buying a dud.
Have some people on your team that are gonna protect you is very important. Agent, a title attorney, a lender that's gonna make sure that they're gonna do what they say. So yes.
Yeah. And that goes back to community. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to a random agent about that, if you go to a network meetup, I mean, those are just some questions you can ask and see if anyone in there has any experience or familiarity with that and can help guide you if that is what the road you want to go down. So, well, I appreciate your time, Nico. You're awesome. You shared a lot of information. What is it you do outside of real estate? I actually loved how you asked me that. So I'm going to ask you, what's hobbies or what is Nico? How is Nico a normal person like the rest of us?
Yeah.
And what do you like to do?
Yeah, I like to think I'm just a regular dude, man. I love sports. As you can see, I'm repping my alma mater, Stevenson Soccer. I still play to this day. I will play till I can't anymore. So, I love soccer. I have a favorite team. I have a favorite club. Let's see what else. I love traveling. My fiance and I love traveling. We went to Greece earlier this year. We're going to Italy down the road this year. And what else? Love watching movies. I'm an avid movie watcher. But just an overall, I just like having fun, man. And the reason why I got into real estate is to get that financial freedom. I'm looking to buy cash flow rentals, kind of similar to like you, what you're up to now. I know you're doing a flip, but I know you do a few out of state investing. That's my goal. Eventually, we're gonna go start doing some out of state investing so that we can get that cash flow coming in where we can retire. I love doing what I love doing, about helping people buy and sell, but I don't want to do this forever, man. I want to enjoy life and continue having fun because there's so much that you could do, right?
So much that you can do. And
Yeah.
we're not chasing people with W-2s. Hate to say it, those heroes and those people we look up to, they've jumped out, stuck their head out, tried investing. I'm sure we all want to be like a professional sports player, but not all of us get to be on that stage.
A little too late for me, man. Yeah.
So Nico, I actually do have some friends and family in the DMV area now that you've explained to me what it is. So I will reach out to them, let them know that there is an agent that can support them if they want to do real estate in that realm. And if you guys are wanting to invest in the area, Nico is glad to help you guys, give you information. His life seems pretty fun, what he shared. So if you follow him on Instagram, you can see a lot of those things. And I think you're giving updates on your flip every now and then as well, correct?
Yep. You can follow me.
What's your socials?
Yeah. You can follow me at N Garcia, Garcia, N Garcia official on all social platforms. But yeah, I like to give updates. I mean, even me just playing soccer,
Right.
me out at a nice restaurant. I'm, like I said, born and raised in Montgomery County, Maryland. So I'm all about it. If anybody that's listening wants to invest or do fix and flips here locally or just wants to have a conversation, definitely reach out to me. And then we also, and I'm sure you were going to tee this up later, but we also host a podcast. We had Ricky on, my good friend Anna and I, it's called the Agent to Investor podcast. And mainly our main goal where we started was to bridge the gap from real estate agents to real estate investors so that everything that Anna and I were learning on the investing side, agents could understand. But it's kind of evolved since then. It's really for anybody looking to learn about the investing world. We've had some great guests. We had Casey, Chad. We've had you on, and we continue to have some great guests just talking about their journey because everybody gets into real estate from different ways and from all over the country, which is awesome, man. I think that's the most powerful part of social media is getting good friends, getting connected with people that are thousands of miles away and really following the journey, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good show. Agent to Investor podcast on all podcast platforms. So make sure you guys follow. I'll put it in the description along with their socials. I know Anna's not on, but we'll add hers into it as well, his co-host. But thank you for your time as always, man. It's been a pleasure. You taught us a lot, and maybe down the road we can meet again on either your show or mine. We can talk about our flips coming to an end and see where that took us in our next journeys.
Heck yeah. Thank you, Ricky, for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I'm enjoying watching your journey, man. So, continue doing what you're doing, and we'll definitely stay connected. Do another
Absolutely. Yes, sir. I appreciate you, brother. Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.